program is the active center. It's created by David Sappe.
Pronounced Seppi.
Pronounced Seppi.
Today, we're going to talk about probably the most influential person you've never actually met. See, he's perfectly logical, completely self-interested, and he's basically the foundation for a ton of modern economics. His name? Homo Economicus, the economic man. So let's dive in. But first, let me just ask you something. Think about the last time you went shopping. Did you buy only what was on your list? Or did you, maybe grab that candy bar at the checkout? Or that extra gadget you didn't really need? Yeah, of course you did. We all do. And that gap, the space between what a perfectly logical person should do and what we actually do, that's exactly what we're exploring today. All right, so to even begin to make sense of our messy, complicated economic world, economists needed a starting point. They needed to create an ideal, a sort of perfect model of a decision maker. So let's meet this economic man. So what is Homo economicus? Well, at its core, it's a theoretical stand-in for a person. And let's be super clear, this isn't a real guy. It's a model of a perfect decision maker, someone who is always 100% logical and always acts in their own best interest. Just imagine a supercomputer walking around in a human suit, instantly calculating the absolute best outcome for every single choice it makes, whether it's buying coffee or playing the stock market. Okay, so this whole idea really rests on three big assumptions. They're kind of the bedrock of a lot of classical economic theory. The model just assumes that we humans are pretty rational, that all our decisions are made to maximize our own satisfaction, what they call utility, and that we'll act in a sensible, predictable way when things get tough financially. Pretty much everything else is built right on top of this foundation. So you have to wonder, where did this idea of a perfect economic human even come from? Well, it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It's an idea that actually evolved over centuries, and it was shaped by some of the most famous thinkers in all of economics. The whole thing really starts to take shape way back in 1776 with the one and only Adam Smith. In his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, he introduced this idea of a rational actor and talked about how, weirdly, everyone acting in their own self-interest could lead to good things for society as a whole, the famous invisible hand. But what's really interesting is that even Smith himself kind of had second thoughts, later writing that he hoped for nobler objectives. It wasn't until John Stuart Mill came along that the idea got really hardcore, defining this person as someone who just wants to get rich and is a genius at figuring out how to do it. And just look at these traits. I mean, this is where it gets kind of wild. Our economic man isn't just self-interested. He's perfectly rational, has a boundless intellect, and has perfect knowledge of all his options. His goals never, ever change, and his only mission is to maximize his own gain. Seriously, these aren't just traits, they're basically superpowers. It's an impossibly high standard for any real person to meet. Okay, so I know what you're probably thinking right now. If nobody is actually like this, then why on earth is this a foundational concept in economics? And that's a great question. But it turns out having an idealized model like this is actually incredibly useful. Here's the most important thing to get. Homo economicus was never meant to be a perfect photograph of you or me. It's a blueprint. Think about it. An architect's blueprint doesn't show the furniture or the color of the paint. It strips away all the messy details of life to show you the underlying structure. That is exactly what this model is designed to do for the economy. And wow, as a blueprint, it is incredibly powerful. Economists use this model to try and predict how we'll all behave when, say, the price of gas goes up or a hot new product hits the market. By assuming that everyone is a predictable, rational actor, they can forecast how millions of people might react to huge things like a tax cut or a change in interest rates. It gives them a baseline for making these massive policy decisions. But for all its usefulness, when you hold that perfect blueprint up to the light of the real world, well, that's when you start to see the cracks. This is the part where the clean, simple model crashes head-on into the messy, complicated, and wonderful reality of actual human beings. And would you look at this contrast? It's just night and day, right? The economic man is perfectly rational. We are totally influenced by our emotions. He has perfect knowledge. We're lucky if we have half the facts. He's driven only by self-interest. We care a lot about what other people think. His preferences are set in stone. Ours can change by lunchtime. This quote just nails the main criticism, which really comes from the field of behavioral economics. The argument is that while we're definitely not perfectly rational, our irrationality isn't just random chaos. We are, in fact, predictably irrational. We all tend to make the same kinds of mental mistakes and have the same biases over and over again. And maybe the biggest crack of all is that this model completely misses the whole idea of subjective value. I mean, why is one person willing to spend a fortune on a concert ticket while another person wouldn't go even if you paid them? The economic man has no answer for that, because the model strips out all the personal experiences, the memories, the emotions, the very things that actually make something valuable to us. So, where does all this leave us? Is Homo economicus just a totally worthless idea we should throw out? Well, not quite. The thinking is that it's actually something a bit more nuanced. I think the best way to think about it is as a useful fiction. Yeah, it's not real in any literal sense, but it's useful because it gives us a baseline, a simple starting point. And from there, we can start to understand the much more complex reality of how people actually behave. Ultimately, the model's greatest strength, its simplicity, is also its biggest flaw. By just ignoring our messy, illogical, emotional human psychology, it gives us a nice, clear structure, but a totally incomplete picture. It's kind of like having a perfect blueprint for a house, but knowing absolutely nothing about the chaotic, unpredictable people who are actually going to live inside it. And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. So many of our systems, our financial markets, our public policies, you name it, they were all designed with the assumptions of the economic man in mind. So if we know that we aren't these perfectly rational creatures, what does that mean for the world we've built? And how might we start to redesign it, not for the economic man, for the real, predictably irrational humans we all actually are?